What conspiracy is just straight up false? The bullshit about Avril Lavigne being dead and having been replaced by a clone. The guy who posted the original story literally came forward to say that it was 100% false, and he only posted it to prove a point about how gullible people were when it came to things written on the internet. You might be familiar with the whole idea that you eat 8 spiders per year in your sleep. You might also be familiar with the idea that this is, in itself, a hoax. So the story goes, in 1993 a writer named Lisa Birgit Holst was writing an article for a magazine called PC Professional all about how no one bothered to fact-check things and how easy it was to get people to believe any old garbage as long as you presented it in the right way. Naturally, this is how conspiracy theorists get you to believe the idea. They present just enough information to be plausible while still ignoring all of the other information. This is the official line from Snopes, who post a clear false rebuttal without further comment. The problem is, no one has ever been able to locate this article. Not in 25 years at this point. No one's ever been able to track down a publication named PC Professional that was active at the right time, and no one's ever heard of Lisa Birgit Holst. The last one isn't particularly surprising, perhaps, because her name is an anagram of "this is a big troll." Moreover, the citations in the Snopes article don't align with anything relevant. They cite a book called Insect Fact and Folklore by Lucy W. Clausen, which does exist, but page 24, which they note as the source for the quote, doesn't have anything to do with spiders, let alone eating them. It's actually about moths. There is no section in the book about spiders, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise to the entomology nerds among you, because spiders are technically arachnids and not insects anyway. So what's the deal? Well, it's very possible that it's a copyright trap on the part of Snopes, sort of in the way mop makers would include paper towels in their work, so that anyone copying the map would also copy the error and be found out. Snopes has to be aware of this theory now, and yet the page hasn't been updated. The other possibility, of course, is that Snopes is just fucking around, and created a page about people who don't check their sources to encourage people to check their sources. So yes, the idea that you might eat 8 spiders a year is false, but the explanation of why it's false is also false, and almost certainly purposefully so. Layers upon layers. Bermuda Triangle. The second ship's got GPS, the whole Bermuda Triangle mystery just ceased to exist. Oh, if this particular area of the Earth has higher sea and air travel than the most of the Earth. This area also happens to have a higher number of incidents. Coincidence? That we didn't land on the moon. Even if you cast aside all the photographical evidence, the 400,000 people who each could prove that it wasn't real, or even the argument about the state of CGI and VFX in that time, there's still one huge piece of evidence that isn't mentioned that often. The Soviets, Russians never tried to discredit the US. They publicly admitted that the US managed to do it. I once heard someone debunk this theory, and part of it stuck with me. There are 2 scenarios: everyone knew, or the higher-ups only. In the first case, everyone involved in building the rocket knew they were wasting years of their lives, and yet it went off without a hitch, and without even a deathbed confession many years later. In the second scenario, we are faced with this problem: NASA outsourced a lot of the manufacturing. All those people thought they were actually sending Omeo to the moon. So, when NASA received all the pieces of rocket they commissioned, they had a perfectly operational rocket in need of assembly. And yet they just let it rust in a corner and faked the landing? It doesn't make sense. Michael Collins kept a diary while he was in the lunar orbiter. In it he detailed how if there were some kind of malfunction of the lander, or an accident of some kind, he decided that he would continue back to Earth without Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, noting that the mission was to return home. He wrote about leaving his comrades behind, even if they were alive on the lunar surface, in order to complete the mission. That's quite a detail to be faked. Like someone at NASA would needed to have thought of this minute detail and create a fake Michael Collins journal. This is one of the biggest reasons, aside from the obvious photos and other physical evidence, that I have a hard time believing it was faked. Any theory that completely ignores the concept of human error. For example, flat Earth can be debunked a million different ways, but the thought that NASA is lying about the Earth being flat to make money? Like all those thousands of employees are keeping this secret? Have you ever tried to get even one person to keep a secret? So the issue with conspiracy theories is that they usually start from by identifying a legitimate issue, Hey, sure seems like there's a lot of pedophiles amongst the rich and famous, and then settle on the simplest answer instead of the most likely. Like, there's a lot of rich and famous pedophiles because, A, when someone is famous and it comes out that they're a pedophile, you're more likely to hear about it, and B, people with a lot of power and influence are more likely to be able to get away with whatever they want, be that pedophilia, tax fraud, or even something as benign as being shitty to people in private. There's not really an easily fixable root cause, it's just the inevitable result of lots of power being in the hands of a few people who feel like they're untouchable under the law. But that's really hard for some people to grapple with. They want evil to be something centralized, something to attack. They want it to be easy to oppose with little to no nuance. That's why QAnon thinks every powerful pedophile is part of some huge cult that drinks baby blood and literally worships Satan. Because a cult is a clear target, and if you destroy it then the problem is solved. The idea that most of the evil in the world is largely incidental, the result of people acting like people within the systems we've built, is anathema because reforming a system is really fucking hard and the best way to do it isn't always clear. So I guess my point is that birds are obviously real and I can't imagine any world where bird drones would be easier than just monitoring everyone's internet history, which is what actually already happens. Too long didn't read. Conspiracy thinking is an unfortunate side effect of wanting to live in a simpler, less nuanced world, which is why the bird thing is a stupid conspiracy theory. Just to clarify, the bird thing is intentionally stupid. It's a fake conspiracy theory that was started to make fun of how ridiculous conspiracy theorists sound. The founder of the movement was recently on the Ron Burgundy podcast. He tried to maintain character but did crack a couple of times. He's also done a few interviews not in character. Vaccines cause autism. The doctor who said it had obvious flaws in his subject selection process, and peer-reviewed it himself so it was full of flaws. And as a person with autism, I think I can say with confidence that living with autism is better than dying of smallpox at age 3. The DNA of sperm stay in a woman and determine future children. Fucking no. Also, a vagina does not become loose from multiple male partners. How is it different between 50 different penises only one time, or one penis 50 times? It's not. There is no difference. I hate incel conspiracy theories. That Kurt Cobain was murdered. The whole thing was started by the sleazy private investigator, Tom Grant, who happened to find himself in the middle of a high-profile case and has been capitalizing on it ever since, convincing idiots who can't spell that he has the truth. The evidence is so absurd and easily debunked that it amazes me that anyone falls for it. He made a really trashy, gross, exploitive Netflix documentary a few years ago about it. If Courtney Love's public image wasn't that of a train wreck, I doubt this conspiracy would have any staying power. None of his friends or family think he was murdered. His personal life was an absolute shambles at the time of his death, and there are countless clues sprinkled throughout his art, lyrics, and journals. He attempted suicide a month before he died. Fans of Nirvana know all of this. There are no suspects. There is no hard evidence whatsoever. Yet, a lot of people are still convinced there is a wide-reaching conspiracy involving Courtney, the Seattle PD, and possibly aliens. It's so stupid, yet very prevalent, enough so that the first rule of r/Nirvana is no death conspiracy discussion is allowed. Lots of stuff in this thread that only crazy fringe groups believe. In terms of something that a lot of people, including probably lots of people here on this thread, do believe but is totally false, the idea that phones are listening in on your real-life conversations to target you ads. I have worked in the online ads industry, at more than one of the companies that would be doing the monitoring, targeting. I've seen the code for how 2 of the biggest ad networks in the world work. I've gone through the actual process to get new data signals approved for ads targeting, etc. etc. I've also been on the buyer side, working on models to figure out how to target people for our ads. You see a lot of ads every day, you have a lot of conversations with people, you give a lot of data just by visiting different websites, typing things in search boxes, Google search boxes, Amazon search boxes, other random sites, and demographic correlations. You like X, you must be the kind of person who likes Y, are incredibly strong. That ad that popped up right after you talked to someone IRL about it is there because you are the type of person who is more likely to talk about the product. just based on the kind of sites you go to, even if you've never deliberately searched for it. You have also probably seen the very same ad before and didn't notice it the first time because you hadn't just been talking about it. I'm sure at least a couple people reading this won't believe me and will think I'm covering up for big tech or something, but maybe the scarier reason big tech isn't listening to your in real-life conversations is that they just don't need to. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It may have been written by Ford, but it wasn't written by the Jews.